Hello everyone, I am ThatGuyMatt, and welcome back to the finale that is our Jaws franchise review. We've been through all this together, we've seen the highs, we've seen the lows, so how does the fourth one stack up in this franchise? Well, I think the most appropriate thing for me to do, actually, is to tell you guys a story in regards to Jaws the Revenge. So, let me tell you a story. Well, one day, my mother took me to a CD warehouse, which if you don't know what that is, was, or still is, essentially a brick and mortar store that focused on selling records, CDs, video games, and of course movies. I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary as I was straddling down the lines with all the Blu-rays and movies on the racks, but I stumbled across one movie in particular that caught my interest, and that was Jaws the Revenge. The thing is, I literally had no idea this was even a real movie. So, as a kid, I got excited because, as a kid, you naturally get excited for seeing another Jaws film. And I asked my mother to get me a copy of it. She said yes, as long as I finished my homework before I watched it, which I did. So we went back home, I finished up my homework, popped in the movie, and my god, I think that finishing, or at least doing my homework in general, was more exciting to watch than this fucking movie was. So Jaws the Revenge was released in 1987 and was directed by Joseph Sargent. And it tells the story of Ellen Brody, once again played by Lorraine Gary, as she takes a vacation to the Bahamas with her family. But after the death of her son, Sean, she fears that a shark is out there waiting for its chance to get revenge on her and her family. Yeah, the synopsis is about as ridiculous as it sounds. A shark makes a conscious effort to seek out a family that has killed 3 previous shark friends or family members. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Jaws the Revenge and see how bad this movie jumps the shark. That's the best I got, I swear. We jump to Ellen, played once again by Lorraine Gary, and her son Sean making dinner. It's been several years since the events of the previous films, so the movie catches us up to speed. Sean is a police deputy, and his brother Michael is a marine biologist, but we'll get to him later. We then cut to them doing some Christmas shopping. Wait, hold on a second. Christmas shopping? In a Jaws film? Who the fuck thought this was a good idea? I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but I do not like the idea that this film is set during Christmas. The film already feels tonally different because the previous films were all based during the summer, which make them warm and thematically appropriate films to watch for said time. Setting this movie during Christmas, however, was such an odd decision. Right as Sean's about to be released from duty, however, he's called to remove a log from a channel marker, so he sets out and is quickly attacked. So wait, there's already blood in the water before the shark actually bites down? Someone needs to report that to a doctor. I feel like that shark has some gun bleeding problems or something. That's not normal. I don't even know what normal is anymore. Shortly after, however, the shark comes back to finish the job, pulling Sean under and finishing him off for good. Now, I've heard some people say that they don't like the editing for this shark attack sequence, but if I'm being honest, I actually think this is one of the better ones in the whole franchise. Now, I know what you're thinking, yeah, this is a shitty movie, but let me explain. For a shitty movie as this one, I have to at least give it credit where it's due. If you don't care for the flurry of cuts and the editing, I can understand, but I think it adds a level of horror not being able to see everything. In fact, I'd imagine this is actually how it feels being attacked by a shark. Chaotic and disorienting. Not to mention the feeling of isolation with Sean on his own, hearing the Christmas carols in the distance, it's all really well done. The only thing I don't really care for is that Sean treats his arm being bitten off as more of an inconvenience of anything. So yeah, Jaws the Revenge starts off somewhat decent. Despite the out-of-place Christmas theme, it feels like they're putting aside the mess that was Jaws 3 and trying to give us another terrifying and tension-filled installment. But I'm gonna be frank here, okay? The first 10 minutes of this movie is easily the best, and if you're not even remotely interested, I recommend you just move on and go do something else with your day. For me, however, I have to continue. So let's get this shit over with. Following his brother's death, Michael, played by Lance Guest, and his family come to visit Ellen and comfort her. Now get ready, this is where the plot of the movie starts to rear its ugly head, and oh boy, you're gonna love this.
It came for him.
What?
It waited all this time and it came for him.
Yes, you heard that right. This random shark is now hunting the Brody family and is specifically seeking out revenge for killing its family or friends or whoever. Someone actually got paid to write this. Now, I really want to talk about this more, but that'll have to wait for later. For now, we need to establish something else. With the exception of Sean, you might be wondering, everyone's here except for Martin Brody. The writers killed Martin off between movies, and you might be wondering, what did he die from?
It killed your father.
Dad died from a heart attack.
He died from fear. The fear of it killed him.
Mom.
Martin died from fear? Are you fucking kidding me? The guy who killed 2 great white sharks in the past, you're gonna try and tell me that he just died from fear. Yeah, I believe that movie. I really believe that. Now that's what the writers wrote his fate to be. But you know what I think actually happened? They tried to get Roy Scheider to reprise his role, but he didn't want to do Jaws 2 to begin with. So I'm sure this was reaction after being asked to return for the revenge. Now, to be fair, I'm not exactly upset by the fact that Martin is dead. Hell, he could have just died of natural causes and that would have been fine. But implying that fear of sharks is what killed him is just absurd. Shortly after Sean's funeral, Mike and his family convince Ellen to come with them to the Bahamas. So you're thinking they should be safe right now, right? Exactly, because there would be no way that the shark would actually have a psychic ability to follow the family from New York to the Bahamas, right? People, I wish I was making this shit up. I really wish I was. We then get an appearance from Michael Caine, who plays a pilot named Hoagie. Not gonna lie, he's probably the best part of this movie, but we'll get back to him later. We then get a scene of Ellen swimming in the water and she's attacked. But of course, it was all a dream. Now, I'm not inherently against the idea of dream sequences as a whole. I think sometimes they can be effective and work. However, in this movie alone, there are 2 of them. Hooray. On Christmas Day, Ellen encourages Mike to give up his job as she feels it's too dangerous. But he tells her that she has nothing to worry about, as all he does is study snails, and explains that he works in warm waters in which great whites don't inhabit. But come on now, you think that's actually going to stop a shark from seeking out revenge? Not according to this movie. While out on the beach, Ellen gets a really bad feeling as she looks out at sea. Okay, look, I know I was joking earlier, but I'm being serious now. Does Ellen have, like, some type of psychic connection with this shark? Because how does she just sense it's out there? Nothing in this movie makes any goddamn sense. Hoagie shows up and takes her out for a good time of dancing and drinks. Nothing interesting happens, so we switch back to Mike and his partner Jake, as their boat is chomped on by the shark. The next day, Jake encourages Mike that they take a break from studying the snails and instead focus their attention on the shark. Mike is reluctant, of course, but ultimately agrees as long as Jake doesn't tell his family about it.
Do me a favor, will you? Don't say anything about this to my mom.
Mike goes into the sub to study some more snails, but wouldn't you know it, the shark shows up to ruin his fun. It then chases after him. And this is the funny thing about this movie as well. Despite most sharks being able to swim up to 35 miles per hour, it barely is able to keep up with a man that is seeking out revenge for. Does this shark just not have it in him to do it? I don't understand why the shark is taking its sweet-ass time. He escapes into some abandoned wreckage, and get this, the shark somehow manages to follow him into the ship. What the hell? Did it shrink or something? I feel kind of bad for this thing. It must be cramped in there. Mike uses his oxygen tank and releases the air to propel him to the surface. Now, admittedly, this is a cool tactic to escape from a shark, right? But wouldn't surfacing that quickly cause some bends or something like that? I don't know. I don't know. The very next day is the event of Carla's artwork show. And of course, because it's the climax, Michael's daughter is almost killed by the shark, but barely misses her and eats another lady instead. Man, this shark absolutely sucks at killing its victims. I mean, as of right now in this movie, it's only killed 2 people, not including the dream sequences, mind you. It's killed 2 people, and only one of them was a Brody. I mean, for fuck's sake, shark, you could do a lot better, couldn't you? Ellen has decided that enough is enough, so she takes Michael's boat out to sea, and once they find Ellen and confront her about why she took the boat, she says this.
It kept
Did
coming.
you realize what you were doing?
I had to do it. There was nothing else to do.
What the hell is she even referring to here? Was her whole plan just to go out at sea and hope the shark would be there so that way the shark could eat her, and then the shark would be like, "Oh yes, I've eaten my victim, so everything's okay now. Thank you so much." Fuck, man. Michael and Jake put together a device that will drive the shark crazy if they can manage to stick it in his mouth. I just realized how bad that sentence actually sounds. Alright, moving on. Jake manages to get the device into the shark's mouth, however Jake gets eaten. Ellen then slowly begins to drive the boat into the shark and Michael charges the rig, which causes it to go berserk. Ellen then rams the boat into the shark and impales it to death. No, actually, that was unfortunately the TV version. In the theatrical cut, for some reason, the shark just blows the fuck up. What the fuck? So yeah, the shark is dead, Jake is somehow alive, and they all make it back to the island. Ellen then takes a plane ride back to Amity, and that's pretty much the end of this shit show. how did we even get here? If I haven't already been able to convince you, I think it's safe to say that Jaws the Revenge is not just a terrible Jaws movie, but arguably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The whole idea of sharks taking things personally and seeking out the Brody family for revenge is just as silly as it sounds. I could go on about how scientifically inaccurate this movie is, but I don't think it's worth the effort. Let's talk about the characters. Now, the fact that this is the fourth film in the series that revolves around the Brody family is already stupid enough on its own. Seriously, they need to stay as far away from the ocean as possible. But I do have to give the movie some credit with Lorraine Gary as Ellen. Even though the psychic stuff was ridiculous, I can at least understand where she's coming from. Her paranoia is warranted given how many times her family has been attacked by sharks. And while I do think it gets tiring, Hoagie comes in to ease her paranoia. I didn't discuss his role very much, but as I said earlier in my review, Hoagie is probably my favorite character in this movie. He just wanted to have fun and enjoy life in its purest form. The rest of the characters are alright, I suppose. The best I can say about them is that compared to Jaws 2 and 3, they at least have more likable traits, interests, and personalities. And now on to the shark, which is arguably one of the most important parts of a Jaws film, because after all, it's in the name. Oh my god. I thought the shark looked bad in Jaws 3, but I can at least say that they utilized it in that movie more effectively. Not to mention the fact that this movie takes place in the Bahamas and the waters being more clear removes a lot of the tension, as you can just see the shark freely swim through the water, and you can see it coming from a mile away. The shark also just feels like it's on sedatives the entire movie, which makes it really hard to believe that it's out for revenge when it feels like it gives up half the time. I left out a lot from this movie because a lot of it was just unnecessary to discuss. I mean, besides the scenes with Hoagie, everything else is just kind of dull. However, I do want to point out a few positives, as there are a few things that I did like. The opening shark attack was good overall. It sets a good atmosphere, even if the rest of the movie doesn't really match the tone. It was a horrifying sequence. Even though it's derivative of another scene from the original Jaws, I do like the scene with Michael and his daughter making faces. It wasn't a necessary scene, just like you could argue that it wasn't necessary in the original Jaws, but let's be honest, we all liked it because it gives them characterization and is just kind of charming in its own way. Many of the shots in the movie did look good. I'm not familiar with a lot of Joseph Sargent's work as a whole, but for what it's worth, he did an okay job at directing. The music this time around was tackled by Michael Small, which overall I think was fine. However, I do have to say that his version of the Jaws theme was pretty good. It builds off the original, and despite being familiar, it feels different enough to be its own theme. And that's really it. I don't mean to come off this way, I wish I had more positive things to say, but Jaws the Revenge feels even more unnecessary than the previous films. Even though Jaws 3 and 4 are bad in their own right, Jaws 3 at least tried to do something more original. And when it's all said and done, Jaws the Revenge was the final entry in the series and finally put it to rest. And what we got was a ridiculous, melodramatic, unintentionally funny at times, and worst of all, boring Jaws sequel. I don't want the word boring to be associated with Jaws movies. For better or worse, Jaws the Revenge has gone down in history as one of the worst films in the series and beyond. Jaws is one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's part of a rather mediocre series of films that I'm not too fond of. With all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Jaws review series. I had a lot of fun doing this despite a lot of the bullshit that I had to endure. And thank you to all of you guys for just watching the channel and for subscribing. You guys are an absolutely amazing audience, and I can't wait to start making more reviews for you guys in the future. That being said, let me know what your thoughts are on Jaws 4, and let me know if you have any suggestions for future movies or series that you'd like me to cover. Thank you all for watching, this has been Matt, and I will see you guys all next time. Take care.